The Battle of Pharsalus stands as one of the most iconic and decisive battles in ancient Roman history. Taking place in August 48 BCE, it marked the climax of the civil war between Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great. What had begun as a struggle for power between two of Rome's most powerful men culminated in a battle that would shape the future of Rome itself. For Caesar, Pharsalus represented a gamble, an all-or-nothing clash against a much larger and well-supplied enemy force. For Pompey, it was supposed to be the final blow that would put an end to Caesar's ambitions and restore order to the Roman Republic. However, as history unfolded, Pharsalus would instead be the beginning of the end for Pompey and his supporters. After the inconclusive Battle of Dyrrhachium, both Caesar and Pompey regrouped in Greece. Pompey, confident after his minor victory at Dyrrhachium, hoped to lure Caesar into a decisive confrontation in a position of his choosing. He had the advantage: a far larger army, better resources, and strong backing from the Senate. His army consisted of over 50,000 legionaries, bolstered by auxiliary forces from Rome's eastern provinces, along with a formidable cavalry force nearly 7 times larger than Caesar's. The seasoned veterans of his legions were reinforced by recruits from the nobility, many of whom were loyal to Pompey due to family ties and political alliances. Caesar's forces, on the other hand, were significantly outnumbered, totaling only about 22,000 legionaries. These men, however, had been through years of battle under Caesar's leadership in Gaul and had proven their loyalty and skill time and time again. They were tired, short on supplies, and exhausted from their rapid march to engage Pompey, but their experience and discipline would prove crucial. Despite their disadvantage in numbers and resources, Caesar remained confident. His belief in his troops, combined with his bold tactics, would turn the tide of the conflict. The two armies finally faced each other near the town of Pharsalus, in the fertile plains of central Greece. Pompey, relying on traditional Roman military doctrine, positioned his forces with their backs to the river Enipeus, effectively securing his rear and ensuring that his troops could not retreat. His plan was to use his vastly superior cavalry to overwhelm Caesar's smaller force, flank his infantry, and crush them with a pincer movement. On the surface, it was a sound plan. By deploying his cavalry on the wings and massing his legionaries in the centre, Pompey believed that once his cavalry broke through Caesar's lines, the battle would be over swiftly. Caesar, on the other hand, understood the limitations of his own force. He couldn't win by conventional means, and he needed to innovate if he were to stand a chance. He placed his infantry in a traditional formation, with his legions forming 3 lines. However, he kept his elite 10th Legion, the soldiers who had fought with him in Gaul, stationed at his right flank. Anticipating Pompey's reliance on cavalry, Caesar devised a plan to counter the expected flank attack. In addition to his cavalry and infantry, he positioned a 4th line, consisting of 2,000 of his best soldiers, slightly behind his right flank. These men were instructed to remain hidden until Pompey's cavalry charge began. As dawn broke over the plains of Pharsalus, the two armies took their positions. The sun beat down relentlessly, casting long shadows across the battlefield. For many of the men on both sides, this would be their last day. The tension was palpable. Roman legions, once united under the banner of the Republic, now stood divided, poised to destroy one another. Pompey's forces, confident in their overwhelming numbers, awaited the signal to attack. The battle began with the traditional Roman advance, as Pompey's legionaries marched toward Caesar's lines. Caesar, however, held his troops back, keeping them stationary, conserving their energy. Pompey's forces advanced in unison, but Caesar's troops remained in their positions until they were close enough for effective engagement. When the battle finally began, Caesar's troops rushed forward, crashing into Pompey's front lines. The fighting was brutal, with both sides exchanging blows in a tightly packed melee. As expected, Pompey's cavalry, commanded by Titus Labienus, one of Caesar's former lieutenants who had defected to Pompey's side, charged Caesar's right flank. Caesar's outnumbered cavalry retreated, drawing Pompey's horsemen further from the main battle. It was then that Caesar's hidden fourth line, composed of infantry armed with pila, throwing spears, revealed itself. These men were ordered to target Pompey's horsemen directly, thrusting their pila into the faces of the cavalry, a tactic designed to disrupt the cohesion of the mounted troops. The tactic worked brilliantly. Pompey's cavalry, caught off guard by this unexpected maneuver, began to fall into disarray. Labienus tried to regroup his forces, but the damage had already been done. Pompey's cavalry broke, fleeing the battlefield. This was a turning point in the battle. Without cavalry support, Pompey's infantry was exposed on both flanks, and Caesar quickly exploited this vulnerability. Caesar ordered his right flank to press the attack, pushing forward into the gap left by Pompey's fleeing cavalry. At this critical moment, Caesar's battle-hardened legions, who had fought alongside him for years in Gaul, took advantage of the chaos. His elite 10th Legion, known for its discipline and ferocity in battle, surged forward, flanking Pompey's infantry. With no cavalry to defend their flanks, Pompey's legions began to falter. Pompey, observing the breakdown of his cavalry and the pressure on his infantry, was paralyzed by indecision. He had always relied on his strategic mind and careful planning, but now, faced with the unpredictable nature of battle, he hesitated to commit any reserves. As Caesar's forces began to envelop his legions, Pompey's troops, who had initially been confident in their numbers, started to panic. Without orders from their commander, and with the pressure of Caesar's relentless attack, Pompey's army began to break. The pivotal moment came when Caesar's fourth line of reserves, who had remained relatively unengaged, charged forward to complete the encirclement of Pompey's forces. Caesar's army, outnumbered but emboldened by their commander's presence and strategic brilliance, pressed their advantage. The battlefield was now a sea of confusion, with Pompey's legions retreating in disarray. The once mighty force that Pompey had assembled began to dissolve into a chaotic retreat. Caesar's legions pursued the fleeing Pompeian soldiers, cutting them down as they attempted to escape. For many of Pompey's men, surrender was not an option. They had committed themselves to a cause they believed was just, and now, with Caesar's forces victorious, they knew that defeat would mean death or capture. The carnage was immense. Thousands of Pompeian soldiers were killed in the rout, and thousands more were captured. Pompey himself, seeing the hopelessness of the situation, fled the battlefield. He had lost his army, and with it his best chance of defeating Caesar. Accompanied by a few loyal followers, Pompey fled to the coast, where he hoped to escape by sea. His destination was Egypt, a kingdom ruled by the young Ptolemy III, who Pompey believed would offer him sanctuary. The aftermath of the Battle of Pharsalus was a momentous turning point in Roman history. Caesar had not only defeated Pompey, his greatest rival, but had also cemented his control over the Roman Republic. The victory at Pharsalus was as much psychological as it was military. Caesar's reputation as an invincible commander was now firmly established, and his ability to outthink and outfight a larger, better supplied army was a testament to his strategic genius. As Caesar surveyed the battlefield, he knew that the civil war was far from over. While Pharsalus had been a decisive victory, Pompey's supporters still controlled significant territories, and the Senate, though weakened, had not yet been fully brought to heel. Caesar would need to continue his campaign, but for the moment he had achieved what many believed was impossible. He had defeated the great Pompey the Great in open battle. Pompey's fate, however, was not one of a dignified retreat. After arriving in Egypt, he sought refuge with Ptolemy III, hoping that the Egyptian king would offer him the support he needed to rebuild his forces. Instead, in a bid to win favour with Caesar, Ptolemy's advisers betrayed Pompey. As Pompey disembarked from his ship, he was ambushed and assassinated by Ptolemy's men. His body was left to rot on the shore, a tragic and ignoble end for one of Rome's greatest generals. When Caesar arrived in Egypt shortly after, he was presented with Pompey's severed head as a trophy. However, Caesar was not pleased. Despite their rivalry, Caesar had once considered Pompey a friend, and had hoped to offer him clemency, much as he had done with other defeated enemies. Pompey's assassination was a stark reminder of the ruthless politics of the time and the lengths to which men would go in their pursuit of power. The Battle of Pharsalus was not just the defeat of one man, but the end of an era in Roman history. With Pompey gone, Caesar now stood unchallenged as the most powerful man in Rome. But while the battle was over, the aftermath of Pharsalus would ripple through Roman politics for years to come. Caesar's consolidation of power would lead to the eventual fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. For Caesar, the victory at Pharsalus was a validation of everything he had fought for. His army, loyal and battle-hardened, had followed him through impossible odds, and together they had defeated the combined might of the Senate's forces.